Vintage is coming to MTG Arena. Kinda. We aren't getting straight vintage, but we're getting the vintage version for Arena, which is going to be like historic, but it's going to have every single card that you can collect on the platform legal at its inception, and they're going to introduce a restricted list. At Timeless's inception, only Channel, Demonic Tutor, and Tybalt's Trickery are restricted to 1 copy per deck. In essence, the format is following on from No Ban List Historic, a very popular format both for videos for myself and other creators, and just in general with play patterns. They also had that format being all access for people, which made people super excited to play it. And then when they brought it back, with a small ban list, which was including Channel, because Channel was by far the best thing you could do in No Ban List Historic. In today's video, I want to talk about the 2 things that they can do differently to make this a success on Arena. If the Arena development team don't take this advice and make these changes, the format is going to be quite expensive to buy into, which is one of Arena's biggest problems anyway. Let's talk about that. If you like this video, hit the link in the description below to coolstuffinc.com to pick up single or sealed product and get 5% off your order. If you're picking up cards from Murder at Karlov Manor, you get a special token with my likeness on it. I can't show you the image yet. It's not quite shown to the public, but you get a special PleasantKenobi token. And if you want to support the show, Patreon is the best way to do it. For $2 a month, you get access to my Discord server where I chat about magic, Warhammer, food, bread, spices. $2 is less than the price of coffee, so come talk about ejaculate on my Discord. That makes it sound like it's really sexual. Ejaculate's normally just the punchline to a shit juvenile joke. What can I say? I'm the master of shit juvenile jokes. Shitting its way out of the anus of Wizards of the Coast this Christmas is Timeless onto MTG Arena. That was me trying to make a juvenile joke to tie into the juvenile joke thing. I'm not suggesting that the format will be shit. I know a lot of you are going to comment that Arena is shit and the format will be shit, but if I'm honest with you, Arena is still fun to play Magic on, and I think this format's going to be a lot of fun, at least initially, or once they sort of get through the initial hurdle of banning and restricting a few cards. Timeless is going to be the non-rotating Eternal format, the vintage of MTG Arena. I say vintage because it's the restricted list thing, which is unique to vintage in paper, where you can have some cards restricted to just 1 copy, and they rarely really ban anything. So, except for cards like Luris that are way too good for everyone and everything. So the format is going to be a non-rotating 60-card format. So constructed Magic with all the toys and a small curated banned and restricted list. This means cards like Brainstorm that were pre-banned in Historic, and the Fetches, which are being pre-banned in Historic. You can't play them in Historic. These cards will be linchpins. They will be iconic and powerful staple cards for the format. Brainstorm plus Fetchland is incredibly powerful in Legacy and Vintage and a very fun way to play Magic. I really recommend people giving this a shot if they like a lot of agency in their games. The issue with Brainstorm is that, well, it's a rare on the client. I'll come to that more in a moment, but it's one of the big changes they need to make. It was a Strixhaven Mystical Archive, making it currently rare to craft. Again, we'll come to that more in a moment. Beyond that, any card that you can collect on MTG Arena. That's all the Strixhaven Mystical Archives, all of the Enchanted Tales from the Fairy Tale set 2, Wilds of Eldraine, all the retro artifact frames from Brothers War, all the stuff that's currently on the client. So that includes the Brainstorms like I just mentioned. It doesn't include is like the power and stuff that's already programmed on the client because you can't collect them yet. Stuff that was in like some of the dual deck stuff and things that Oracle of Alpha can create into your deck. Those cards aren't collectible yet, but they could print them into a future draft set, a future Vintage Master or Cube draft set you can keep the cards from, so they could become part of the format in time. It really could become like actual Vintage, which I think would be a really fun and interesting way to engage with Magic. And lastly, it's going to involve rebalanced digital cards but original tabletop printings. This one is a bit of a contentious point. A lot of people will talk about how they don't want to have any of the alchemy shit touch these formats, and I kind of see where they're coming from. It would be really cool if this was the closest we can get to a digital version of Vintage on the Arena client, but instead they really don't want to abandon those custom designs that the dev team have made. Jarsil and Crucius are probably 2 of the most powerful ones that could still see play in the Timeless format. These are digitally unique cards that I think are quite fun to play with. They're incredibly powerful. Jarsil is kind of nuts when you think about it, but these cards are fun. I personally have never really had an issue with digitally unique cards. On the flip side, there are cards that just do different things across different printings. In this case, we have Dragon Mage Channeler, which is a 3/3, and Dragon Mage Channeler is a 3/1, which is what it probably should have been printed at, but I just don't like the idea of cards not doing what they do in paper. It upsets people, it makes the game harder to understand, it means that you can't move your knowledge from one format to another, which I think is a great thing about card game as expansive as Magic. It's really shit to not know what a card does when you know the card. And on to that, there are digitally unique cards that I really can't stomach, which is when they use the same art assets and the same like sort of printing slot in non-commander products, like they do with Baldur's Gate. There's a Jehovah that we all know and love from the paper set, set that I love as a commander, and the digital version does something completely different, which again is destroying that knowledge base that I think is fantastic. You can bring it from one format to the next. I think being able to understand Magic at a glance is such a very strong element of what makes Magic such a good game across all of its formats. So ultimately, I have no real issue with the digitally unique cards that are completely and utterly not available in paper. They are just different cards available in a different format of Magic, in the same way that some cards are in Vintage that aren't in other formats. I kind of wouldn't mind if they just left them out of this to, I don't know, attract a wider user base. That's another thing. You don't want to alienate your fucking viewers and your users and your players as much as Wizards continue to do with choices like this. But ultimately, the paper cards do what they do in paper is great. That means that Minsc and Boo will be a very strong card in this format because it's Vintage and Legacy playable. Someone's going to criticize me for saying Minsc and Boo is Vintage playable, but I think it is. I think you can absolutely fuck people with Minsc and Boo Vintage. So the first change is addressing this whole problem that comes with the cards from the Strixhaven Mystical Archives that are going to be strong in this format, in limit. I keep wanting to call it Limitless. It's not called Limitless, it's called Timeless. In the case of Brainstorm and an Inquisition of Kozilek and Dark Ritual, these cards are all commons and often get printed at common. Back when they first got printed and now, Brainstorm was printed at common in the Warhammer products most recently. The problem with having them all be in their rare form in the Strixhaven archives, and even though they are commons or uncommons traditionally, it means it'll waste your wild cards when looking to pick these up for the format. The biggest sticking point about Arena has always been the cost. I've made so many videos about the issues with the economy to the point that it bugs me and just pisses me off to continue to talk about it because I'm dissuading people from playing Magic, and I think Magic is fantastic as a game. And I think Arena can be a very fun way to play Magic. I think the overall UI and interface is strong enough to hold the game up. And even the small issues and niggles I have don't detract from the fact that we're playing fucking Magic the Gathering. The problem has always been the economy. I've always found that to be very stingy and very rough for new players to get into, especially. Like, there's instances of videos that I just decided not to make because I was getting so fed up with it, where it's more expensive to buy an $80 mono red deck for standard on Arena by buying the wildcards raw dog from the store than it is to buy the deck in paper, which is just not how a digital client should be. I have banged that fucking drum a million times. So when it comes to a format that I'm quite excited about playing, a vintage light format on MTG Arena with all this cool weird shit in it, I get bummed out when people are telling me that's going to cost them 25 wildcards to craft their deck on Arena. All 5 of the fetch lands, for example, are going to be rares, and because they're legal, you're going to be playing anywhere between 4 and 12 of these, maybe even more, maybe up to 14 of these cards in your fucking decks at any one time. These are incredibly powerful. They're going to be format defining. Add to that the need to now craft from multiples of cards like Brainstorm and Inquisition of Kozilek to be able to play in this older format, and you're now using up your rare wild cards for both your land base and these other cards that are normally commons in draft environments. With Tendrils and Lightning Bolt and Faithless Looting, all of these were originally common or uncommon as well, and now they are rares in the Mystical Archives. Well, not quite true. The Faithless Looting actually have a common printing in the Shadows of the Past from the Innistrad Remastered set that came out a few years ago. I say a few years ago, it was probably only like a year ago, but time flies when you're playing Magic. This is a common reprinting of the card onto the client, and although it's a digital client, you might be thinking this doesn't matter, but it does, because you now craft this with your common wild cards. I think that we've got an absolute abundance of them, the majority of us, right? I currently have 307 common wild cards on my client and only 16 rares, as an example. Another one for this is Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix is about to put it into standard via Color of Mana and bringing it down from the illustrious rare slot, the normal spot where we're all being bottlenecked on how we build our decks. And a really fascinating point about all of this with the rare upshifting Mystical Archives is that Wizards of the Coast learned from this mistake going forward. A good example of this is Griffin Airy, an M21 uncommon that no one gives a shit about that ended up being on the Enchanting Tales sheet from Wilds of Eldraine. There is of course an argument that it is a wasted slot because no one wanted this fucking card either for limited or their constructed decks for the most part. Okay, it's an okay limited card. But going onwards after Mystical Archives into Brothers War's retro frames, into the Enchanted Tales and so on, they didn't upshift all the commons and uncommons to rares and essentially fuck over people playing on Arena. They learned from this. In a way, the Mystical Archives are the problem. They are the gatekeepers. They are an old era that's coming back to bite us in the arse again. again, because a lot of these spells are the essential linchpins of classic formats like Vintage. What I'm saying is that cards like Brainstorm, Swords to Plowshares, Dark Ritual, and Tendrils of Agony shouldn't use up rare wildcards, your most premium currency on the platform, unless you're looking to rinse people's collections and really reduce the wildcard count in accounts. Something that they need to do is just code these in at common or uncommon as a goodwill gesture. Fuck it, load people's, the best goodwill gesture would be to load people's accounts of a staple thing on release, to give a load of people the uncommons and commons like these for free, essentially, because commons and uncommons don't really matter, right? That would be amazing, but they're not going to do that. So the next step is just to put some common and uncommon versions in. You don't have to re-put them into a set somewhere like you did with Faithless Looting. That would have been nice up to this point. It would be nice just to have them on the client in those slots so you can craft the uncommon and less fancy looking versions to make the decks less expensive to buy into. The funny thing is, some of these cards might be coming in Modern Horizons 3. I doubt, because if you didn't know, by the way, Modern Horizons 3 is coming to Arena. So not all of these cards will get reprinted. I don't think Brainstorm or Plowshares is going to go into Modern anytime soon. I guess they could, but I doubt it. But these cards are probably getting some prints in there, which will fix this issue. But it's too little too late if you want Timeless not to look like an expensive cash grab of a format early on. If you want this format to do well, you need to show your players that you're willing to help them get engaged with it without rinsing their collections or their wildcard collections and draining their virtual wallets. My last point is talking about how they will do restrictions in future. They said that cards on the restricted list will be limited to only a single copy in combined main deck and sideboard, and when a card is added to the restricted list and is no longer legal in any other format, players will receive wildcards for each copy of the card in their collections greater than 1. For example, if a player owns 4 copies of a card that is added to the restricted list, the player will receive 3 wildcards for that change. The problem is, this sounds like if the card is legal in another format like Historic Brawl, for example, which Lightning Bolt is, if they ever restricted Lightning Bolt, which they won't, but if they ever restricted Brainstorm, which is a possibility, I guess, then they wouldn't refund you the wildcards if it was legal in Brawl. I think that needs to just be cleared up. This is the second point they need to change. They need to clear that up. I think it's just a really safe bet if they ever restrict a card in the format is to take the additional copies. So say they restrict Brainstorm. They leave 1 copy in your account and they take 3 out of your account, but give you the wildcards back for them, especially if it's a fucking rare like it's going to continue to be until we have it re-put onto the client. Take 3 away, give you 3 wildcards, and then allow you to recraft them if they're useful elsewhere. Do you see what I mean? I don't think you can ever make the argument that because it's legal in some fringe format you don't play, that you shouldn't get your wildcards back when they restrict things. If you ever temporarily ban, suspend, or restrict cards, or errata them in any perceivable way in another format, this is a whole thing I've been talking about with Alchemy for fucking, what, 2 years now I've been complaining about this? I gave up complaining, but I'm back. If you change the cards from their original intended purpose that you purchased them for or crafted them for, take them out of the account and give them the wildcards back. And then if I find the card still useful, I'll recraft it. It's so simple, but it makes the buying into Timeless so much more, I know, an easier sell. I want to make videos about this format. I want to enjoy this format with my viewers and with my followers, because I'm a social media influencer. But it becomes hard to sell this to people. Listen to me, MTG Arena developers, please. It becomes hard to sell this to people if you aren't willing to do the absolute minimum to make it an easy pickup, to make it less expensive on the in. Please do these absolute fucking minuscule changes that would take, I don't know, a day at best of somebody's time. I'm no computer man, I'm just a wordy man, but I'm assuming that change, for example, or just making some of these rares have common alternatives would take a little bit of time for the UI to be updated and those assets to be made, but it can't be that much if it would at least show that you care about making the format accessible to the fans of Magic. And I mean it, by the way, comment section, who are reading this and watching this and thinking, fuck, he's going on about this stupid format. I'm going to need 25 wildcards and shit. And I know that's going to be a sticking point for many. And I think that's a shame. I really wish they'd make this game a little bit more accessible for people so that I don't get all these fucking comments of being people angry about it. Hell, fuck it. When you launch Timeless, the real good thing to do would be to give everyone 8 wildcards. 8 wildcards. I know that's virtually $20 or whatever to you people in your, like, how much you sell the wildcards back to us, but it'd be such an incredible gesture. I mean, some people will be like, whoa, wow, 8 wildcards, but it's something. It's more than you've ever given to the community, ever. So I'm really excited for the format. And I really want to make videos for it, but the comment section are full of people being fucking angry about how Arena is ripping people off. I really, really do. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you looking forward to the format? Would you like to see some content on the format? Or are you one of these people who's so angry at Arena? Would these changes make it an easier buy-in for you? Would you be more keen to reinstall or re-update the client and give it a go? Let me know in the comment section below. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.